Phoenix, Arizona, was waking up slowly, shaking off the early morning desert mist. On the outskirts of the city, where the asphalt gave way to narrow dirt trails and overgrown fences, stood a small animal rescue. The wooden building, with its peeling paint and crooked sign, looked humble, but life pulsed inside. The barking of dogs, the rustling of bedding, the purring of cats waiting for their chance. Laura, a 20-year-old veterinary student, had been coming here every weekend for 6 months. Her slender fingers, accustomed to textbooks and syringes, gently stroked fur, and her eyes searched for a spark of hope in every animal. The shelter had become her second home, a place where she felt needed. Among the 20 cats living in the crowded kennels along the wall, there was one that stood out not for its beauty, but for its soul, Patches. She was a white cat with black spots resembling ink blots, hence the name. She was 4 years old and had been picked up off the street, shivering and thin, yet with surprisingly lively eyes. Patches wasn't a purebred. She didn't have a rare coat or a fluffy tail that would make visitors gasp. She was just an ordinary cat, simple, like the neighborhood tabby sleeping on a porch. But there was something special about her. Every time people came to the shelter, she reached out to them through the wire mesh of her kennel. Her small paw, with its pink pads, clutched at the air, and a loud purr spread through the room like a song. It was as if she was saying, "Look at me. I'm here. I'm waiting." Laura noticed Patches on her very first day at the shelter. Not knowing all the cats' names yet, she stopped at her kennel, captivated by that gesture. Patches stared right into her eyes, never breaking the gaze, and Laura felt a pang in her heart, a mix of pity and admiration. "You're such a smart girl," she whispered, extending a finger. Patches immediately sniffed it, nudged her nose against it, and purred so loudly that Laura laughed. Since then, Laura always lingered by Patches's kennel, bringing her bits of cooked chicken and scratching her behind the ear. The cat responded with gratitude, pressing against her hand, but Laura saw in her eyes a longing not for food, but for a home she didn't have. Every Saturday, the shelter filled with voices. Families with children, young couples, older women, all came looking for a new friend. Laura watched them walk past the kennels, stopping for kittens with fluffy faces or cats with bright blue eyes. Patches tried her hardest, reaching out a paw, purring, rubbing her face on the bars, but people, as if blind to her, walked right on by. "Oh, how cute!" they would exclaim, looking at a ginger kitten, or "That Siamese is simply gorgeous." And Patches would remain in her kennel, her paw slowly lowering as yet another visitor left, holding a carrier with a different animal inside. Laura felt her heart ache every time Patches was overlooked. She couldn't understand why no one saw what she saw, the kindness in those round eyes, the affection in every movement. One day, after another family chose a kitten with a fluffy tail, Laura couldn't bear it. She crouched by Patches's kennel, opened the door, and let the cat out onto the floor. Patches immediately jumped onto her lap, nudged her head into Laura's palm, and started to purr. "Why won't anyone take you, huh?" Laura whispered, stroking her soft fur. "You're the best." Patches looked at her as if understanding, and Laura felt tears sting her eyes. She didn't want to cry, not here, and certainly not in front of a cat who had already waited too long. That evening, as the shelter was closing, Laura went to see Mrs. Elena Johnson, the manager. Mrs. Johnson was sitting at an old desk, filling out the record book. "Mrs. Johnson," Laura began, fidgeting with the edge of her sweater, "why won't anyone adopt Patches? She's so affectionate, so special." The woman looked up. her expression softening. "Laura, people look for something flashy, something unusual. Kittens, purebreds, cats with striking eyes. They catch the eye right away. But Patches, she's plain. Too plain for most. But you know," she added, smiling, "for someone, she'll be the one they need most. That person just hasn't arrived yet." Laura nodded, but deep down she disagreed. How much longer could she wait? 6 months in a shelter is an eternity for a cat who reaches out a paw to everyone, hoping for warmth. She returned to Patches's kennel, sat down beside her, and took a crinkled foil ball from her pocket. The cat immediately came alive, chasing the toy, and then lay down next to Laura, resting her head on the girl's arm. "You're not plain," the girl whispered. "You just haven't found your person yet." She didn't know that this person was already closer than it seemed, and that soon Patches's life would change forever. Saturday at the shelter began with the usual clamor. Morning light streamed through the dusty windows, casting long shadows on the worn linoleum. Laura arrived early before opening hours to feed the cats and clean the kennels. The smell of dry kibble mixed with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that Mrs. Johnson always made in her office. The shelter was waking up. Dogs in the back pens started barking, demanding attention, and the cats in their kennels stretched, anticipating their morning meal. Laura moved quickly, but her gaze kept returning to one kennel in the far corner where Patches sat. The white cat with black spots was already awake and watching the girl, purring softly as if to greet her. Laura went to her first, opened the door, and took out the bowl. "There you go, my sweet girl," she said, scooping the food. "Today is your day. I can feel it." Patches nudged her nose into Laura's hand, then carefully began to eat, occasionally lifting her head to look at Laura. The girl smiled, but the familiar ache of sorrow pricked her heart. She knew her words were more wishful thinking than truth. In the 6 months Laura had volunteered, not a single visitor had chosen Patches. Every time the doors opened and people walked into the hall, the cat would perk up, stand on her hind legs, reach out to the bars, and purr so loudly she could be heard in the next room. But it was all for nothing. Today, a young couple with a small girl in a bright pink jacket came to the shelter. Laura led them down the row of kennels, telling them about each cat. "This is Whiskers. He's 2 years old, very playful, loves children," she said, pointing to a gray cat who was lazily batting at a toy. The little girl clapped her hands and her parents exchanged glances, clearly interested. Laura secretly glanced at Patches, who was, as always, extending her paw through the bars. Her eyes sparkled with hope, and her purr was so loud it drowned out the creak of the floorboards. But the girl walked right past, barely looking, and her mother said, "We'd really like a kitten. They are so adorable." Laura nodded, hiding her disappointment, and led them to the kennel with 3 fluffy kittens who immediately began playing with a string. Later, an older gentleman in a worn coat came in. He was looking for something special for his wife, who loved long-haired cats. Laura showed him Liza, a Persian cat with blue eyes, and the man immediately grinned. "Wow, she's a beauty," he said, taking out his phone to snap a photo. Patches was reaching out her paw again. Her purr trembled in the air, but the man merely glanced at her and moved on. Laura felt something tighten inside. She wanted to yell, "Look at her! She's the best one here!" But instead, she silently collected the empty bowls, trying to avoid meeting the cat's eyes. By the end of the day, the shelter was empty. The family took one of the kittens, and the man promised to return for Liza if his wife approved. Laura sat on an old chair in the corner, watching Patches lie curled up in her kennel. Her paw was no longer reaching for the bars, and her eyes, usually so lively, seemed dull. Laura opened the door, let the cat out, and sat on the floor, allowing Patches to climb onto her lap. "Don't give up, okay?" she whispered, stroking the soft fur. "Someone will see you. They have to." Patches purred, but softly, as if agreeing without much faith. When Laura returned to Mrs. Johnson's office to help with the paperwork, she couldn't hold it in. "Why does no one notice her?" she asked, fidgeting with a pen. "She's so affectionate, so genuine. Is it really just because she's not a kitten or a purebred?" Mrs. Johnson put down her ledger, removed her glasses, and looked at Laura with a gentle smile. "People see what they want to see, Laura. Kittens are like toys. They attract attention right away. Purebreds are like decorations. People show them off to their friends. But Patches, she's for those who are looking for a friend, not a picture. Those people are rare, but they exist. Give her time." Laura nodded, but her frustration simmered. Time. Patches had been waiting for 6 months, reaching out her paw every day to people who simply walked past. Laura remembered her grandmother saying in her childhood, "The one who waits with an open heart will always be rewarded." But how much longer did Patches have to wait? She returned to the kennel, picked up the cat, and went out with her to the small yard behind the shelter where volunteers sometimes let the animals run around. Patches came alive, chasing a dry leaf that the wind rolled across the ground. Her movements were light, almost joyful, but Laura saw how the cat kept looking back, as if searching for someone. Laura stayed later than usual that evening. She sat on the bench in the yard, holding Patches on her lap, and told her about her day, her lectures, her roommate who always left dishes in the sink. The cat listened, purring, and Laura suddenly realized she was doing this not just for Patches, but for herself. She felt better when the cat was near. Her warmth and softness were calming. "You deserve a home," Laura said, looking into Patches's round eyes. "Not just a cage, but a real home where you'll be loved." She didn't know that the next day a person would arrive at the shelter who would see more in Patches than just a cat, and that this meeting would be the beginning of something new, not just for the cat, but for Laura herself. The morning at the shelter was unexpectedly warm for early autumn. The sun broke through thin clouds, and its rays fell in slanted streaks across the worn floor of the hall where the kennels stood. Laura arrived before opening with a backpack full of textbooks and a thermos of herbal tea her mother had brewed. She loved these Saturday mornings when the shelter was still quiet and the cats were just beginning to wake up, stretching in their kennels. Today was a special day. Mrs. Johnson had warned her that a new volunteer was coming, and Laura was supposed to show her everything, from the food storage room to the back pens. "Her name is Anna," the manager said, adjusting her glasses. "Quiet, but she knows her stuff. Be gentle with her. She's new to Phoenix." Laura nodded, but her thoughts were mostly on Patches. She went to the cat's kennel as soon as she entered. Patches greeted her, as always, with a light purr, but her eyes were sadder than usual. Laura crouched down, opened the door, and stroked the cat's head. "There's a new person today," she whispered. "Maybe you'll get lucky." Patches nudged her nose into her palm, but didn't lift her paw, as if she no longer believed anyone would notice her. Laura felt a pang in her heart, but forced herself to smile. She knew hope was the only thing keeping Patches going, and she didn't want the cat to lose it. The shelter door creaked open, and a woman in her early 30s walked in. She wore a dark green jacket and had short brown hair tucked behind her ears. She carried a small backpack and looked guarded, as if she wasn't sure she was in the right place. "Anna?" Laura asked, standing up. The woman nodded, her lips twitching into a slight smile, but her eyes remained serious. "Yes, Mrs. Johnson said you would show me the ropes." Her voice was quiet, almost timid, but it held a firmness, like someone accustomed to keeping things under control. Laura began the tour, trying to be welcoming. She showed Anna the food storage room, where bags of dry kibble were stacked to the ceiling, explained how to mix medicine for sick animals, and led her to the dog pens, where the dogs immediately started barking, sensing a stranger. Anna listened silently, occasionally asking short questions. "Do you change the water twice a day? Who manages the cleaning schedule?" Laura noticed how her gaze caught every detail: a crack in the wall, a forgotten bowl, a kitten curled up asleep in a corner. She seemed reserved but observant, and Laura felt respect for her. When they reached the cat room, Laura brightened up. She loved talking about the cats, each one special to her. "This is Whiskers. He loves to play with string," she began, pointing to the gray cat. "And this is Liza, the Persian, a very important lady, but affectionate once she gets used to you." Anna nodded, but her gaze skimmed over the kennels until it stopped at the one in the far corner. Patches was sitting there. The cat lifted her head, noticing the new presence, and slowly, almost reluctantly, reached out a paw through the bars. Her purr was quieter than usual, as if she no longer expected a response, but couldn't stop herself from trying. Laura held her breath. She was used to people walking past Patches, but Anna stopped. She crouched down, looking at the cat, and slowly extended a finger toward the bars. Patches froze, sniffed the finger, and then nudged her nose against it, letting out a short, almost surprised purr. Laura felt her heart quicken. "That's Patches," she said, trying to speak calmly. "She's 4 years old. We found her on the street. She's the most affectionate cat here, but no one ever notices her." Anna didn't answer, continuing to look at the cat. Her face softened, and something like understanding flickered in her eyes. "How long has she been here?" Anna asked, not taking her eyes off Patches. Her voice was quiet, but her interest felt genuine. Laura sighed. 6 months. Since I started working here, she reaches out to people every day, but everyone chooses kittens or purebreds." Anna nodded, as if she had expected that answer. She carefully opened the kennel door, and Patches, after a moment's hesitation, stepped out, rubbed against her hand, and lay down nearby, offering her head for a stroke. Anna petted her, and the cat purred louder, closing her eyes in pleasure. Laura watched them, feeling warmth spread through her chest. For the first time in a long time, Patches wasn't just reaching out. She had been seen. Anna spent the whole day at the shelter, helping Laura clean and feed the animals, but every time she had a free moment, she returned to Patches. She would sit by the kennel, stroke the cat, and sometimes quietly talk to her, so softly that Laura couldn't make out the words. Mrs. Johnson, noticing this, whispered to Laura, "Looks like your Patches found a friend." Laura smiled, but a slight worry stirred in her soul. Anna was a volunteer, not a visitor. Would she adopt Patches? Or, like everyone else, just talk to her and leave? Laura didn't know, but she saw how Patches came alive under Anna's hand, how her eyes started to sparkle again. And in that moment, she knew this meeting wasn't a coincidence. Something told her that Anna and Patches needed each other, even though she didn't yet know why. When the day ended, Anna said goodbye, promising to return the following Saturday. Laura walked her to the door, then returned to Patches. The cat was sitting in her kennel, but she wasn't curled up in a ball as usual. She was watching the door through which Anna had left, and her tail slightly twitched. "You feel it, don't you?" Laura whispered, petting her. "She's different." Laura didn't know what lay behind Anna's silence, but she felt that this woman carried a story, as fragile as Patches's hope. And deep down, Laura hoped that this story would lead to something good for both of them. Laura arrived a little later than usual, delayed by a bus stuck in traffic on the outskirts of Phoenix. She walked into the hall, where life was already bustling. Cats were meowing, demanding breakfast, and the dogs in the backyard were barking at passing birds. Laura tossed her backpack in the corner and immediately went to Patches's kennel. The cat greeted her with a light purr, but there was something new in her movements, a slight vivacity, as if she was waiting not only for Laura, but for someone else, too. "You're thinking about Anna, aren't you?" Laura whispered, stroking the cat. Patches nudged her nose into her palm, and Laura smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Anna appeared an hour later, just as Laura was finishing handing out food. She walked in quietly, almost unnoticed, wearing the same dark green jacket with a backpack slung over her shoulder. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed a slight anxiety, like someone afraid of being late for something important. "Good morning," she said, nodding to Laura, and immediately headed toward the cat room. Laura followed her, trying not to show how closely she was watching. Anna stopped by Patches's kennel, and the cat immediately came alive, standing on her hind legs, reaching out a paw through the bars, her purr filling the air with soft warmth. Anna smiled, the first time Laura had seen her smile in 2 days, and opened the door. Patches darted out, rubbed against her leg, and lay down next to her, offering her head for a stroke. Laura decided to give them time. She started cleaning, but she kept glancing at Anna and Patches. Anna sat on the floor, cross-legged, stroking the cat and quietly murmuring something. Patches responded with a loud purr, occasionally nudging her nose into Anna's palm, as if agreeing. Laura felt her heart squeeze with tenderness. She saw how Patches came alive under Anna's gaze, how her eyes, dull just yesterday, sparkled again. "You chose her," Laura thought, but she didn't interfere. She knew such moments were fragile, like morning mist, and should not be disturbed. After lunch, when there were no visitors, Laura suggested Anna let Patches run around in Mrs. Johnson's office, where the cats sometimes went to stretch their legs. Anna agreed, and they carried the cat together into the small room with faded wallpaper and an old sofa. Patches immediately began to explore the space, jumped onto the window-sill, batted at a curtain with her paw, and then returned to Anna and settled down at her feet. Anna sat on the sofa, stroking the cat, and watching her with such warmth that Laura felt like an intruder. She wanted to leave, but Anna suddenly spoke. "She's special, isn't she? I don't know how to explain it, but it's like she understands everything." Laura nodded, sitting down beside her. "She is. I've been watching her for 6 months. She reaches out to everyone, but no one ever sees her. But you did." Anna looked at Laura, and a shadow of sadness crossed her eyes. "I know what that's like," she said quietly. "When you reach out and you're not seen." Her voice trembled, and she looked away, as if regretting her words. Laura froze, not knowing how to reply. She felt that something deeply personal lay behind those words, but she didn't dare to ask. Instead, she told the story of Patches, how she was found on the street, thin and cold, how she immediately started purring as soon as she was stroked, and how she had been waiting for her person for 6 months. Anna listened silently, never taking her eyes off Patches, who was now lying curled up on her lap. Her fingers slowly stroked the white fur with black spots, and the cat responded with a quiet purr, as if sharing her warmth with her. 6 months, Anna repeated, her voice barely audible. That's a long time. Too long for a soul like that. Laura nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. She wanted to say something encouraging, but the words felt hollow. Anna suddenly looked at her, and her eyes were so open that Laura felt closer to her than she expected. "I understand you," Anna said, addressing Patches. But Laura felt that those words were more than just an address to the cat. "I'm invisible too." Laura froze upon hearing this. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but Anna's words hung in the air like the notes of an unfinished melody. She realized that Anna carried a pain she didn't show, but one that resonated in her gaze, in her cautious movements. Laura wanted to ask what she meant, but something told her it wasn't the right time. Instead, she suggested, "Let's let her run around some more." Anna nodded, and they released Patches into the backyard behind the shelter. The cat bounded after dry leaves. Her movements were light, almost joyful, and Anna watched her with a smile that made her look younger and softer. When the day ended, Anna lingered by Patches's kennel longer than usual. She sat on the floor, stroking the cat and whispering something so quietly that Laura couldn't make it out. Patches lay next to her, pressed against her hand. Her purr was so loud it seemed to fill the entire room. Laura watched them from a distance, feeling hope grow in her chest. She saw a connection forming between Anna and Patches, not just affection, but something deeper, as if they were recognizing each other. Laura didn't know what lay behind Anna's silence, but she felt that this woman and this cat were two souls who had found each other at the right time. And deep down, Laura hoped that this connection would become more than just a meeting at the shelter. When Anna left, Laura crouched by Patches's kennel. The cat looked at her, and her eyes were brighter than they had been that morning. "You felt it, didn't you?" "Yes," Laura whispered, stroking her. "She didn't just come here for nothing." Patches purred, nudging her nose into her hand, and Laura smiled. She didn't know what awaited Anna and Patches, but she felt that their story was just beginning. And something told her that this story would be about warmth, hope, and how two lonely souls find each other so they wouldn't be invisible anymore. Saturday at the shelter began with a light rain tapping on the roof like fingers on an old table. Laura arrived earlier than usual, feeling a slight thrill. She couldn't explain why, but something told her that today would be a special day. The hall smelled of damp fur and freshly ground coffee that Mrs. Johnson had brewed in her office. The cats in the kennels were already awake, and their soft meowing mingled with the sound of the rain. Laura went to Patches's kennel first, as always. The cat met her with a look that held more light than a week ago. She didn't reach out her paw, but simply sat, gently swaying her tail, as if waiting for something more than a regular meal. "You know she's coming, don't you?" Laura whispered, stroking the soft fur. Patches nudged her nose into her palm, and Laura smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Anna appeared closer to noon, when the rain had stopped, leaving behind puddles and cool air. She walked in, shaking drops from her jacket, and her face was calmer than last time. Laura noticed that Anna had brought a small toy, a hand-stitched fabric mouse. "For Patches," she said quietly, catching Laura's glance. Laura nodded, trying to hide her joy. Anna headed straight for the cat's kennel, and Patches came alive. She stood up, stretched, and her purr filled the hall like a soft melody. Anna opened the door, and the cat immediately jumped onto her lap, sniffing the toy and starting to rub against her arm. Laura watched them, feeling hope grow in her heart. She saw how Patches trusted Anna, how her eyes sparkled when Anna was near. Visitors were few that day. The rain had scared most of them away. Laura and Anna worked together, cleaning kennels and handing out food. Anna was quiet, but her movements were confident, and something new had appeared in her eyes, a light spark that Laura hadn't noticed before. When they finished the main chores, Laura suggested, "Let's let Patches out into the office. She loves running around in there." Anna nodded, and they moved the cat to the small room with faded wallpaper and an old couch. Patches immediately began playing with the mouse Anna had brought, chasing it across the floor and leaping like a kitten. Anna sat on the couch, watching her, and her face softened, as if the rain had washed away some of her inner burden. Laura decided to break the silence. "She likes you," she said, sitting down next to her. "She's different with you, more lively." Anna looked at her, and her lips twitched into a faint smile. "I like her too," she replied quietly. "I don't know how to explain it, but it's easier with her." Laura felt this was the right moment to learn more. "You said you understood her," she began cautiously. "That you were invisible, too. What did you mean by that?" She instantly regretted her question, afraid Anna would shut down, but Anna only sighed and looked at Patches, who was now lying purring on her lap, curled up in a ball. "I didn't want to talk about it," Anna began. Her voice was quiet but firm. "But I guess you have a right to know, since we're here together." She paused, gathering her thoughts, and Laura waited, afraid to even breathe. "I recently went through a divorce," Anna continued, looking at her hands. 5 years of marriage, and in the end, I was like a shadow. He was always busy, work, friends, his own things. I tried to talk, to be close, but he didn't hear me, didn't see me. And then I found out he was with someone else. I left, moved here to Phoenix to start over. But you know what it's like? To feel invisible in your own home. I would speak, and he would look right through me, the way people look at Patches, walking past her, not even noticing her. Laura felt her throat tighten. She wanted to say something, but the words felt empty. Instead, she just nodded, allowing Anna to continue. "I came to the shelter because, I don't know, I wanted to feel needed, even if just by animals. They don't turn away. They don't ignore you. And Patches?" Anna looked at the cat, and her voice softened. "She's the same. She reaches out to people and they walk by, but she doesn't give up. I look at her and I think, if she can do it, maybe I can too." Patches, as if hearing, lifted her head and nudged her nose into Anna's hand, letting out a loud purr. Laura felt her eyes sting with tears. She understood that Anna and Patches were like mirrors for each other. Both were waiting to be noticed, to have their warmth accepted. "You're not invisible," Laura said quietly. "I see you, and Patches sees you." Anna looked at her, and gratitude flickered in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea how much that means." They sat in silence, watching Patches play with the mouse, and Laura felt something warm, almost tangible, grow between them. Not friendship, but an understanding that connects people who share a common care. When the day ended, Anna lingered by Patches's kennel. She sat on the floor, stroking the cat and whispering something so quietly that Laura couldn't make it out. Patches lay next to her, pressed against her hand, and her purr was so loud it seemed to fill the entire room. Laura watched them from afar, feeling hope swell in her chest. She saw that Anna and Patches had found a reflection in each other, two souls who knew what it meant to be overlooked, but still believed in warmth. Laura didn't know what would happen next, but she felt that Anna was more than just a volunteer. She was the person who could give Patches what she had waited for so long, a home where she would be seen. And deep down, Laura hoped that this home would become a reality, even though she didn't know what obstacles lay ahead. The rain in Phoenix had stopped, and the air was filled with the smell of wet leaves and damp pavement. The shelter felt quieter than usual that morning. Cats lazily stretched in their kennels, and the dogs in the backyard only occasionally barked at the morning birds. Laura walked into the hall with a slight premonition that she couldn't explain. She was accustomed to the rhythm of the shelter, its sounds and smells. But today, her thoughts were consumed by Anna and Patches. A week had passed since Anna confessed she wanted to adopt Patches but couldn't because of housing issues. Laura didn't know what had changed during those days, but deep down she hoped Anna had found a solution. She went to Patches's kennel, who was already waiting for her, sitting up straight and gently swaying her tail. "Today's a big day, isn't it?" Laura whispered, stroking the cat. Patches nudged her nose into her palm, and her purr was soft but expectant, as if she, too, was waiting for something. Anna appeared closer to noon, and Laura immediately noticed a change in her. Her steps were firmer than they had been a week ago, and in her hands she carried not only her backpack, but also a small bag of cat supplies, a bowl, a litter pan, and a bag of food. Anna's face was serious, but her eyes held a resolve mixed with quiet joy. "I did it," she said, without preamble, barely entering the cat room, her voice trembling with restrained excitement. Laura froze, not immediately understanding. "You did what?" she asked, though her heart was already guessing the answer. Anna smiled, and the smile was so open that Laura felt warmth spread through her chest. "I rented an apartment, a one-bedroom on the outskirts of the city. It's expensive, but I'll manage. And they allow cats. I'm taking Patches home." Laura felt tears well up in her eyes. She looked at Patches, who, as if hearing, stood up and nudged her face against the kennel bars, purring louder than usual. "Anna, that's incredible," Laura exclaimed, unable to contain her emotions. Anna nodded. Her fingers nervously picked at the strap of her backpack. "I was looking all week," she said. "Calling, walking, checking online. I found this apartment at the last minute. The landlord, an older gentleman, said he loves animals. I signed the lease yesterday. I'll have to save money on everything else, but Patches is worth it." She looked at the cat, and her voice softened. "I couldn't leave her here. She's waited too long." Laura opened the kennel, and Patches immediately came out, rubbing against Anna's legs. But when Anna took out the carrier, the cat froze, her eyes widening and her tail slightly trembling. She backed away toward the kennel, as if afraid to leave the familiar space. Laura felt a pang in her heart. She knew that for Patches, the shelter, despite the cramped conditions and loneliness, had become her world. Anna crouched down, reached out her hand, and quietly said, "Don't be afraid, little one. We're together now." Patches looked at her, hesitated, and then slowly walked over and nudged her nose into her palm. Laura watched as Anna carefully picked up the cat, and Patches, as if having made her decision, stopped trembling. They filled out the adoption papers in Mrs. Johnson's office. The manager, hearing the news, smiled so broadly that her glasses nearly slid off her nose. "I knew Patches would find her person," she said, signing the papers. Anna nodded. Her eyes were glistening with tears, but she held them back. Laura helped her gather Patches's belongings, the fabric mouse Anna had sewn, and the small blanket that lay in her kennel. When everything was ready, Anna picked up the carrier and looked at Laura. "Thank you," she said quietly. "If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have gone through with it." Laura shook her head. "It wasn't me. It was Patches. She chose you." They walked out into the yard to say goodbye. Patches sat in the carrier, but her eyes were fixed on Anna, and her purr, though quiet, didn't stop. Laura felt her throat tighten, but these were tears of joy. She remembered Patches reaching out her paw to everyone, being ignored, waiting for 6 months. And now this cat, so simple and so special, had finally found her home. Anna looked at Laura, and her voice was warm, like a ray of sunshine. "I'll send you photos, I promise. And if it's okay, I want to keep volunteering here sometimes. You and Patches taught me a lot." Laura nodded, unable to speak. She walked Anna to the gate, watching her leave, holding the carrier with Patches inside. The sky over Phoenix was clear, and the first stars were already appearing on the horizon. Laura returned to the shelter, feeling a mix of joy and a slight sadness. She walked over to Patches's empty kennel, where the scent of her fur still lingered, and smiled. "You did it, girl," she whispered. "You waited it out." That evening, as she closed the shelter, Laura felt her heart was full. She knew that Anna and Patches would now be together, and that thought warmed her like a thick blanket on a cold night. Later that evening, Anna sent Laura the first photo. Patches was lying on the windowsill in the small one-bedroom apartment, looking out at the street. Her eyes sparkled, and next to her was a bowl of water, carefully placed on an old mat. Anna wrote, "She's settling in, and so am I." Laura smiled, looking at her phone screen. She knew that Patches would no longer reach out her paw to strangers, because now she had a person who saw her, truly saw her. And deep down, Laura felt that this story was not just about a cat, but about how two souls, tired of being invisible, had found each other to start a new life together.